why you might feel pretty crappy after starting a lymphatic drainage routine, but more importantly, what do you do about it if this is you? So I'm going to dive into the physiology behind what is actually happening and what you can do about it if this happens to be you, or if you're worried about it happening because you've heard a whole bunch of people saying, oh my gosh, I started a lymphatic drainage routine and I felt worse. I felt absolutely horrible. I just can't do it. Don't worry, I've got you. That can happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but it absolutely can happen. So let's talk about what does that look like? Why is that happening? And then what to do about it so that we can ease some of that maybe apprehension behind implementing a lymphatic drainage routine. Because what I can tell you is over a decade of me teaching this, I have seen what people would call miracles. I look at it as, yes, it's a miracle, it's amazing, but our body's a miracle and our body is capable and wanting to heal. We just have to give it the right environment. And one of the ways that we give it the right environment is making sure that our body can remove waste products. So the lymphatic system is one of the ways that our body removes waste products. That in conjunction with gut, liver, kidney, skin, and lungs, right? Those are our drainage pathways. So what are some symptoms that some people may experience when they first start implementing a lymphatic drainage routine? They might get headaches. The headache might even turn into a migraine. They might feel achy, like everything just feels achy and stiff and sore. They might feel like the flu's coming on. They might feel like they're getting sick. They might feel nauseated. They might have an upset stomach. They may end up with diarrhea. There's so many possible symptoms that can happen. But when you think about it, all of those symptoms are actually associated or can be linked with having a congested lymphatic system. So a lot of times what people tell me is my symptoms got exaggerated or I got sick, flu, achy, that kind of thing. Let's talk about why that happens. Well, our lymphatic system is our waste removal system, right? It's the sewage system of the body. It is meant to literally collect all the waste products from every cell, tissue, gland, organ of the body, return it to the blood supply, where once it's in the blood, it's gonna go and be filtered through the liver, and then it's gonna be filtered and removed through the kidneys and the gut. What happens when that doesn't flow is things get backed up and congested. So when we don't have a proper flowing sewage system, it would be like your house not having a proper flowing sewage system. You may have congestion in your exit pipe of your house, and that means your toilet, your sink, your shower, your bathtub is all going to eventually start to back up. So all of that waste water doesn't have an exit point. And that's really what's happening in our lymphatic system. So when that happens and when we have congestion and it builds, we're not only going to have waste building up, but we're also going to have a much slower immune system response. So when we start to get things moving, one of two things can happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, or it doesn't mean that the symptoms are going to be horrible, but I want you to know why it's happening and know that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's your body's way of communicating, but it's also your body's way of finally doing something that it hasn't been able to do in days, weeks, months, years, decades, depending upon how long your lymphatic system has been congested. So when we get things moving, one of two things can happen. We can end up having symptoms due to mobilization, meaning moving things around, or we can end up having symptoms due to an activated immune system response. So we're going to talk about both of those. I want you, and we're going to start with mobilization. I want you to picture a pond. There's a pond. You have a pond in your backyard. You know, you want to have a couple fish in there. You want it to be just like a nice, relaxing place to go and just take the stress off. But the problem is your pond doesn't have any water movement. The water's not moving. So what happens is over time, that water becomes gross, right? Algae builds. You end up with a whole bunch of bugs over top of it. The fish can't survive because of the algae and like the bacteria. And so it gets really, really gross. Well, that's the same thing that happens in our body with our lymphatic system. When our lymph isn't moving, the waste, the water that's supposed to be flowing becomes gross. It ultimately becomes stagnant and we end up with bugs and we end up with algae, right? So we end up with like this thicker, grosser water where the immune system can't function properly. Okay, so you see this happening and you're like, all right, I got to get the water moving in my pond because the pond isn't healthy. Well, when our lymphatic system isn't moving, our body, which is the pond, can't be healthy. So what you go and do with your pond is you go and you put a little water fountain in there, a little water feature. You put it in the middle of your pond and you turn it on, and the water feature starts to create movement, right? It starts to move the water, which is fantastic. That's exactly what you want to do. Just like when you start to move the lymphatic fluid, you start to get that fluid moving, which is fantastic. The problem though is when we put it in the pond, depending upon how much was built up, all you're doing initially is pushing the algae, pushing the gunk to the edges. You're pushing it out. And depending upon how strong of a pump, right, is going to determine how far out it gets pushed. So the same thing happens with our lymphatic system. We start to get things moving, which is fantastic. But if we're not doing it properly, or if it's not frequent enough, or if we don't have enough pumps to fully move it out, then we're just pushing it, right? We're just expanding where the water's moving. The same thing happens in our body. So it's not to say over time it's not going to continue to move, but we got to get that gunk out. So some of the things that we may need to do is what I'm going to talk about right after we talk about the mobilization. Like, we're moving things, but we're not eliminating them. Because remember, our drainage pathways is lymph, liver, gut, kidney, lungs, and skin. All of those have to work together for proper removal. So when we get the lymph moving, one, it's going to take time to get it to move, especially the longer that you've had it congested. But two, we got to get it eliminated. We got to make sure that we're not just moving it from one spot in the pond to another. We're not moving it in one part of your body to another. We're actually removing it from the body. And those symptoms happen when we're not fully removing it from the body, okay? The other thing that can happen is we can end up having an activated immune system response. Now, why would that happen? Well, our lymphatic system is part of our immune system, and its job is to ultimately scan all the lymph that's going through the lymph nodes. Like, the lymph nodes, a security system, it's scanning everything to make sure that there's nothing problematic, nothing in there that's going to harm us. What happens though is when fluid's not moving, it's not scanning, it's not acting as a security system because the fluid's not moving through. So there can end up being pathogens, right? So bacteria, virus, parasites, yeast, you name it, that's sitting in our lymph, that's not moving through, that's not actually being addressed by our immune system. So when we start to get the lymph moving and flowing, we can heighten our immune system's response. And now all of a sudden our immune system's like, whoa, oh my gosh, look what's here. A perfect example would be if you have kids, if you've had kids, you have grandkids, nieces, nephews, and you don't go in their room for a while. But one day you decide, like, at night while they're sleeping, you just want to open the door, take a peek, but it's dark. The room's dark. You can't see everything, right? What would happen if you went in during the daytime and the shades were open and all the lights coming in? Well, now all of a sudden you can see the clothes pile in the corner, the laundry basket, you can see the food left out, you can see empty water bottles, you can see forks and utensils, you can see wrappers all over the place, you can see the bed's a total disaster. It looks like their dresser like threw up all over the place. Like, it's a total disaster. And it's just because the light is on. The same thing's happening with your immune system when we start to get lymph moving. It's like we turn the light on to the immune system. Now the immune system can respond to what's happening, which is why some people might end up feeling sick. Like, oh my God, I feel like I've had the worst cold ever. Or I'm starting to get a ton of post-nasal drip. Oh my gosh, when is this gonna stop? Okay, let's talk about why that's happening and what to do about it. One, it's not a bad thing. Our body is just communicating. It's communicating the only way it knows how. It can't talk to us verbally, so it communicates to us via symptoms. So I actually welcome that feedback. I view it as communication and feedback. And then what I can do is then I can make changes and alterations to help support my body based on the communication that it's giving me. So first and foremost, if you feel like absolute crap when you start a lymphatic drainage routine, I am sorry. I don't want you to feel bad, but at the same token, I'm like, yes, you are moving that garbage around and giving it a chance to get out. Now we got to make sure that we're supporting the drainage and elimination pathway so that it can truly get out of your system. So we got to make sure that one, you're hydrated, which most people are not. I can tell you this as a fact because the number of labs that I have looked at since 2013, so 13 years, is thousands. When somebody has a symptom, 98% of the time they are also dehydrated at a cellular level. So one, if you have symptoms, you're likely dehydrated. So we gotta get your hydration up from a cellular standpoint. So what I want you doing is drinking clean water, clean filtered water, with a pinch of salt. It can be Celtic, it can be Himalayan, it has to be unrefined. It cannot be iodized because we need the minerals from the salt, specifically the magnesium, to help pull the water into our cells. So all you're gonna do, literally take a pinch, put the salt on your tongue, and then drink your water. That is going to help you hydrate a whole lot better. Okay, so just a pinch of salt, better hydration. What's going to happen is as we hydrate better, our body is actually going to be able to function better because it's no longer going to have to pull fluid from other areas of the body like lymph, like gut, causing constipation, right? So if we can be better hydrated, we're going to have better elimination and drainage. So that's number one. Number two, you got to make sure you're sleeping because the only way that your body can drain the brain is getting quality sleep, deep sleep. So you have to make sure that you're prioritizing sleep. If you are not prioritizing sleep, you are likely not going to feel great, okay? And truthfully, over time, that's going to become problematic, but we're not going to dive into that today because that's a whole other topic that I 100% would love to dive into it with you guys if that's something you're interested in. But you have to prioritize sleep because if you're not getting deep sleep, your brain cannot open up to allow drainage to happen. So that's when the congestion and the head colds and the headaches and all of that are going to set in, not to mention with dehydration. That's going to play a big role. The other thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is potentially reducing the number of pumps or circles that we're doing on our lymph nodes because it might be too much. You may need to go low and slow, which is totally fine. You may need to be 5 to 10 pumps once a day until you start to feel a little better. It doesn't mean that you have to completely stop. The only time I would say stop is if you get a fever and you are legitimately laid up in bed because you feel like you got ran over by a freight train. That's the case, yes, stop. Focus on hydration, focus on rest so that your body can clear. Then once the fever, once the whole body achiness goes away, and we'll talk about something else you can do in just a second, then you can go back to it, but go lower and slower. So less pumps, less intensity. Remember, we're only going as much pressure as we'd put on a ripe avocado, not a whole lot. So back it off so that your body can do things a little bit slower versus like drinking out of like a sippy cup versus trying to drink out of a fire hydrant, okay? We got to slow it down. The next thing that you might want to consider doing is taking a clean binder. So a clean binder is a specific supplement that has been formulated to ultimately act as a vacuum, like it's sucking things up to prevent redistribution. Because it's that redistribution of toxins that end up giving us symptoms. So if you're somebody that's super sensitive, you know that you have chronic illness, whether it be mold, Lyme, Epstein-Barr, breast implant illness, you name it. You might want to consider taking a binder from the beginning to help absorb the toxins that you're going to get moving as you get your lymphatic fluid moving. Now, I put a couple below for you guys that I use personally that I've seen have come back clean and tested. So there's no additional environmental toxins within it. Because the last thing we want is to take a binder that has other toxins in it, right? We need a clean binder. So you would just follow the directions on the bottle. But ultimately the big thing is hydrate, rest, slow it down. Don't do as many pumps. Don't be as forceful. Maybe only do it once a day. If you have to, go every other day. But what I'm going to recommend is find the frequency that you need. Don't stop. And if you only can do your termini, that's the only thing that you can tolerate, then make sure you're clearing the exit point, which is the termini, your collarbone, until you can get other things moving. So if you have to stay here for a month, stay here for a month, okay? Listen to your body and you do you. But what I'm gonna beg you not to do is don't give up, because the last thing you want is that gross, nasty pond being your lymphatic system, causing over time inflammation, breakdown, just overall not well-being. And then the last thing is consider a clean binder. I hope this wasn't scary. By no means is this meant to be scary. Symptoms are not a bad thing, guys. And I hope that's something that you will get from me is symptoms don't scare me, they don't bother me. It just tells us we need to tweak and change things based on what's going on with your body. So anytime that we have something come up, I want you to take a second, take a step back and thank your body for telling you there's something going on and that you need to do something about it. Thanks so much for being here and happy draining.